Allen Iverson, also known as The Answer, a 6-foot point guard / shooting guard who dominated the NBA in the early 2000s with his skill, talent, and heart. Iverson was an 11-time All-Star, a 4-time scoring champion, a league MVP. He made 7 All-NBA teams, and he led the league in steals 3 times. He was a first-ballot Hall of Famer and is one of the all-time scoring leaders of NBA history. With all of that being said, Iverson was a quite polarizing character, and not just during his career, not just with his off-the-field antics or with his media controversies. It's actually his legacy that's quite polarizing to NBA fans as we reflect on his NBA career. You see, Iverson's career and numbers have many NBA fans very divided about just how good he actually was. Some fans will swear by the fact that Iverson was the most dominant little guard they've ever seen, while a large number of other NBA fans will claim he was simply an overrated and inefficient stat-stuffing chucker. The point of this video will be to see where Iverson actually lies. We're going to take a look at his numbers and some of the narratives about him and put those into context, and by the end of this video, we'll see where Iverson ranks among the greatest guards of the NBA's rich history. Allen Iverson played 14 seasons in the NBA up until he was 34 years old, and in those 14 seasons, he averaged 26.7 points, 6.2 assists, 3.7 rebounds, 2.2 steals on 42.5% shooting. He managed these numbers with his terrific and all-time great ball handling, his solid footwork, his mean crossover dribble, his smooth jumper, and because of his willingness to attack the basket continuously, even on nights when plenty of contact and physical punishment was being dealt to him. Iverson wasn't the greatest on-ball defender, which he himself has admitted, but he was fantastic in the passing lanes and managed to pull in plenty of steals throughout his career. He was also a greater passer and distributor than he often gets credit for. Yes, it's no secret that Iverson's preference was clearly to shoot the basketball, but he had great court vision and managed to make solid passes and get tons of assists considering the amount of shots per game he was taking. On Iverson's career, he shot 21.8 shots per game and averaged 6.2 assists per game. His 21.8 shots is the 4th highest shots per game average in NBA history. Of the top 10 players with the highest shots per game average of all time, only one player averaged more assists per game over his career than Allen Iverson, which was Jerry West. Among these players are legends like Michael Jordan, Pistol Pete Maravich, and Rick Barry, and Iverson averaged more assists per game than all of them. But clearly, the biggest and most talked about aspect of Iverson's career was his scoring. So let's dig into that. He has the 7th highest career scoring average in NBA history at 26.7 points per game. Among guards specifically, that's the 3rd highest career scoring average of all time. He accomplished the 7th highest points per game average in NBA history as a 6-foot guard. A player of Iverson's size or smaller who has the closest career points per game average is the 5'9" Isaiah Thomas, who averaged about 18 points per game and is ranked 100 on the all-time list. That means Iverson is 93 spots ahead of the closest player on the list of his size or smaller. This is why many call Iverson the greatest pound-for-pound player in NBA history, because even as a very small man by NBA standards, he dominated NBA superstars much bigger and stronger than him. Sure, small guys like Isaiah Thomas average over 25 points per game for a single season, but Iverson did it for over a decade's worth of basketball. The Answer was one of only 8 players in NBA history to average at least 25 points per game in 10 consecutive seasons. That's a feat scoring legends like Kobe Bryant, Wilt Chamberlain, and Larry Bird never even accomplished. The other 7 players who accomplished the feat were Michael Jordan, Jerry West, Shaquille O'Neal, Karl Malone, Dominique Wilkins, Kevin Durant, and LeBron James. Needless to say, that's some legendary company, and Iverson is by far the smallest player in that group of scoring legends. Now I know what many of you are thinking, and this is the greatest criticism of Iverson's career. Everyone acknowledges that he scored a ton of points, but many will discredit him as a scorer and scream of his perceived inefficiency. Iverson indeed shot 42.5% from the field in his career. As far as scoring guards go, his 42.5% is much lower than Jordan's 49.7% and a bit lower than Kobe's 44.7%. In fact, out of the top 20 players in NBA history with the highest points per game average, Iverson has the lowest field goal percentage of that group. Obviously, with these facts, you can't possibly try to argue that Iverson was one of the more efficient scorers of NBA history. But with that being said, context is needed to understand why the inefficiency narrative is blown far out of proportion in the case of Allen Iverson. First of all, Allen Iverson was a small guard, meaning he was a perimeter player. Guards naturally play more from the outside and take more shots from a greater distance, so naturally and typically a guard's field goal percentage is lower than a forward's and much lower than a center's. To compare the field goal percentage of Iverson to Shaquille O'Neal or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would be stupid. Don't do that. They clearly play much different positions on the court, which naturally affect their percentages. It makes much more sense and is much more fair to compare Iverson's efficiency to other scoring guards. Sure, Iverson still has a lower field goal percentage than Jordan, Kobe, Wade, Steph, Harden, and Westbrook, but at least they're a lot more comparable now. Also, field goal percentage is only one way of looking at a player's efficiency. True shooting percentage can give you a more complete picture. While field goal percentage only factors a player's efficiency in shots from the field, true shooting percentage factors in their field goals, their free throws, and their three-point shooting. This might surprise you, but Iverson has a greater true shooting percentage than scoring legends like Isaiah Thomas, Elgin Baylor, Pistol Pete Maravich, and John Havlicek. These are typically players who aren't heavily criticized for their inefficiency, but for some reason Iverson is, even though he was technically more efficient than them. Sure, small guards like Steph Curry and John Stockton dwarf Iverson when it comes to efficiency, but his efficiency numbers are comparable to guys like Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, Isaiah Thomas, and Russell Westbrook. Also, efficiency and a player's field goal percentage has a lot to do with who he was playing with. For example, it's no coincidence that Kevin Durant's 3 most efficient field goal percentage seasons of his career happened to be the 3 seasons he played with the Warriors with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. When you have other great offensive players on your team, they naturally garner more attention, which opens up the floor more and gives you more opportunities for cleaner looks. This is a luxury that Iverson didn't have in his playing days with the 76ers. Let me ask you a question. Who was the best offensive player that Iverson played with during his 76ers days? Larry Hughes? Eric Snow? A young and developing Andre Iguodala? Everyone who was watching basketball in the early 2000s knows full well that Allen Iverson carried the 76ers offensively during those years, and that defense's main goal every night against the 76ers was to put a stop to Allen Iverson. He was also leaned upon so heavily offensively that Iverson led the league in minutes per game 6 out of the 10 years he played for the 76ers. Naturally, that lack of help scoring the ball, the huge amount of minutes, and the overall giant load offensively is going to affect your efficiency. It wasn't until Iverson's 76ers days were over when he joined the Denver Nuggets that we finally got to see him play with star power help offensively. Carmelo Anthony was there to share some of that scoring load with Iverson, and the result? Iverson shot a much better 45.6% from the field those 3 years he played with the Nuggets. That's a field goal percentage that then exceeds Kobe Bryant's efficiency. Hopefully this helps illustrates the importance of the supporting cast in a player's overall efficiency. Although I'm certainly not putting Iverson on the Mount Rushmore of NBA efficiency, but given the context, I'm also not going to discredit him or claim that he was overrated based on his percentages. Any star player who played in those days will tell you how lethal AI was and how hard he was to stop. A different aspect some people don't realize is that AI was a player who consistently brought his A game when it mattered most. He was a big game player and a clutch performer. It comes as no surprise that Michael Jordan has the highest points per game average in NBA playoff history. But second isn't Kobe Bryant, it isn't LeBron James, Kevin Durant, or Wilt Chamberlain. The second greatest scorer in NBA playoff history was none other than Allen Iverson, who scored an incredible 29.7 points per game in his career for the playoffs. Among that playoff average were games where he scored 50-plus points, his back-to-back 40-point games to close out the talented Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals, and of course his legendary 48-point game in the finals to defeat the previously undefeated Shaq and Kobe Los Angeles Lakers. This is why this moment is so iconic, because it perfectly sums up the legendary Allen Iverson. Even in an NBA Finals with the juggernaut Lakers looking for a perfect postseason run, even they couldn't stop a prime Iverson from stomping over them. As far as how good Iverson was, I think it's clear from this video that I think Iverson was pretty darn good when you see the whole picture. It's hard to compare him to distributing point guards like Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, and John Stockton because they are just so different from Iverson. But if you compare AI to shooting guards, then I would say he's the 4th greatest shooting guard of all time, behind Jordan, Kobe, and Wade, and just slightly ahead of Clyde Drexler and Jerry West if you count him as a 2-guard. Let me know in the comments section where you think Allen Iverson ranks among the greatest guards of NBA history.